Now you see, light travels faster than sound. That's why some people appear bright until you hear them speak. Now, welcome to part 2 of What If Deku Had Half Light, Half Dark Nomi. And if you haven't already watched part 1, go do that and consider subscribing. Now, roll that intro. While waiting at the top of a building, waiting for the other students to finish their test, after a short amount of time, the test would be declared over, and not a lot of students would have passed due to Deku taking more points than he had intended to. This was a problem for him, and it was kind of a habit. Whenever he got excited, he would always take the battle too seriously. As Deku started to leave, he saw a man with a scarf and strain in his eyes in front of the entrance/exit gate. While leaning on the wall, he was leaning on the wall. Deku just ignored this and would keep walking, and as he got past the gate, the man would say, "Hold up," and start to touch his shoulder. Wait a minute, See, I don't know what this is, but I did not say you could touch me. I know some kung fu, probably some taekwondo. Shit, you must be tripping if you think I'm about to let some crackhead rob me, Deku would say, while aiming a light beam at the floor hitting the ground and making a dust cloud. He would then use his light fruit to leave. Shit, he didn't want no smoke. When Deku got home, he told his mom what happened, that he passed the entrance exams and that he got attacked by a wild crackhead. Inku would start to laugh, and a few hours later, the hologram message saying would have arrived and told Deku that he got into UA and his mom would have been proud of him. The next day, Deku would start to kiss his mom goodbye and use his light travel as usual to get to school. When he arrived, he would go through the front gate looking around, making sure that nobody would pop up and attack him. While walking through the hallways, some blonde kid with a copy quirk would bump into him. He would smile and say, "From the direction you're going, you seem to be in the class 1A. You think you're better than me just because you're in a higher class?" And would go on and on about this. Deku would have had enough and would charge some light in his legs and kick him, making him fly miles and hitting the door of class 1A. Deku would walk up and look down at him and say, "Oh, thank you. You helped me find my class." And would roll his body away from the door, and he would just wonder why the door is so big. As he walked inside class, everybody would stop talking and turn and look at him. "What are you looking at?" he would say while going to take his seat, and Bakugo would look at him and say, "How did you get in here, freak?" Deku would just ignore him and take his seat. "You think you're better than me because you got in? Huh? Why you ignore me, brat?" Bakugo would say, heading towards his desk with an explosion in his hand, and they would get into an argument. Aizawa, which was listening, would yell, "Everyone shut up! It took y'all 7 minutes to get quiet, and you're still talking. And someone tell me, who made a dent in the door?" Deku would say to everyone to watch out. "That's the crackhead that tried to attack me." And Aizawa would say, "Excuse me, I'm not a crackhead. And just for that, everyone get your PE suits and come outside." Uraraka would still do the same thing as an original, asking about orientation, and Aizawa would give the usual response. While the boys are in the changing room, Deku would be changing his clothes, and Kirishima would walk up to him and say, "You're buff." Deku would just nod his head and leave to the PE field. All the boys would look at each other, besides Bakugo, and they would all discuss that he isn't very sociable. Once everyone was outside, Aizawa would tell them that as punishment, they would be holding a quirk apprehension test, and that the person with the lowest score would get expelled. While some of the students would start to protest, Deku would yell at them to be quiet, that Aizawa was doing the right thing here. "What if you got into here by a fluke? This is a hero school where heroes can die at any time. If you die, your parents would blame the school. The crackhead is trying to save those who are weak's lives right now. Just say thank you and learn how to get stronger. Aizawa would smile and say, Midoriya, was it? How far could you throw a ball in junior high or something? Deku would reply about 700 meters and everybody's jaws would drop. Aizawa would give him the ball and tell Deku to go all out. And Deku in his head would say, no, and throw the ball in the air and charge a light beam in his finger, using it to hit the ball, yeeting it around 1,700 meters, which also made a big hole in the center of the ball, which showed his accuracy. Aizawa would look at him and say, you're not fooling anyone, while his eyes turned red and his scarf started to levitate. I know you held back. Deku would have a confused look on his face and say, how? And Aizawa would reply with, because when you took out those 0 pointers, you had this mad grin on your face. I'm guessing it's a habit? Deku would cover his hand over his face and would start to smile. Fine, fine. I'll try now. Aizawa would throw him another ball and Deku would grab it with his left hand, using his darkness fruit on it to covering it, making it have so much rotational, oh my god, rotational friction that it would be as fast as a bullet once it's shot out. When Deku released it, it would go really far, and with his right hand, he would start to make a bow and arrow out of light. He would shoot this at the ball, which caught up to it in seconds and hit the dead center, propelling it to the range around 8,000 meters. Aizawa, looking at Deku in shock, would see that he had the same exact smile. Scary, he mumbled, and All Might from behind the bushes would be amazed as well. Deku would have came in second place in the test, Uraraka coming first and Bakugo coming third. The person to get expelled would have been the Invisible Girl, seeing that her quirk is only to become invisible, which wasn't very helpful when it comes to physicalness, unless she's like Dwayne Rock Johnson. But Deku would tell Aizawa that she can be useful on spy missions, so that she should stay. This would result in nobody getting expelled from UA. Deku would go home and actually try to think of a new move that he could use, and would have no luck. He would then fall asleep and wake up the next day and go to class. All Might would walk in saying, I'm walking through the door like a normal person. And all the students would start to get excited that All Might would be their teacher. While listening to All Might would explain that after submitting their hero suit drawings, and he would pull out a remote and suitcases would pop out from the wall. Deku's costume would look like this. I'll put it up on screen. It would be a white coat with tassels with a generic yellow vest and has some purple on it. All Might would all the kids would come up to the PE field and All Might would start to draw slots for the hero teams, and it would be the same in canon with Deku being Uraraka versus Ida and Bakugo. If you haven't noticed already, Deku is kind of a genius when it comes to strategizing and using angles to his advantage, which is kind of needed for his light part of the quirk, or devil fruit. Him and Uraraka would devise a plan which will be revealed later into the fight. Deku and Uraraka would walk into the building as Deku came up with a plan. He told Uraraka that Bakugo would chase after him and that they should split up to cover more ground. Uraraka would nod her head and they would both split up. Deku would hear something in the distance and knew this was Bakugo, with the explosions charging his way. As he heard Bakugo yell, "Damn it, where are you?" as Bakugo came up from the corner and saw Deku, and immediately shot an explosion at him. Deku dodged this and shot some beams of light at Bakugo, which Bakugo barely dodged them. As Deku held out his hand, darkness engulfed Bakugo's explosions. He said, "Dark Spiral," as darkness appeared in front of Bakugo, and Bakugo would get sucked into it a little bit, and Deku said, "Engulf." Bakugo went inside the darkness and disappeared into it. Deku snapped his fingers, and the darkness spit out Bakugo at high speeds, making him crash into a wall, and Bakugo would cough up blood. Deku would smile and begin to say, "You're no match for me, Kachan." Or Katsuki, whatever the fuck you want to call it. Bakugo would begin to pull a pin, and all of a sudden a massive explosion shot at Deku, and All Might would say, "Young Bakugo, stop! You're gonna kill him!" And Deku would just smile. When the explosion hit Deku, Deku was still smiling, and smoke and ash filled the room. Once all the smoke cleared, Deku's body had little holes in it, yellow and purple, which was his intangibility quirk, or power of his devil fruit. "Oh God, did I kill him?" All Might would say to Bakugo, and Bakugo would say, "I killed him?" Deku's body would start to retangulate itself, and everybody would be surprised. His body returning to light and darkness mixing together to form back his original appearance. Deku would look at Bakugo, and Bakugo would say, "This will be more fun." And he would charge at Deku, and Deku would shoot a light beam, making Bakugo fling back into a wall, causing a huge crater. Bakugo on the floor would be a little bit passed out and start to get back up, and Deku would say, "Light chains," as chains of light wrapped around Bakugo, making him immobile. We go to Uraraka, who was just heard an explosion, and Bakugo, she knew this was Bakugo. She would then hear some more blasts, and a huge light beam would come out the floor. Deku would start to come out with his light quirk, and then he would knock out Ida with a light beam to the neck. And Uraraka would touch the bomb, and the exercise was finished, with Deku's team winning. This is the end, and hope you guys liked it.